You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan, brought to you by the Hockey News. With over 2 million dedicated readers, the Hockey News, established in 1947, is the authoritative source of hockey and the number one hockey publication in North America. With an ever-growing podcast network and a video database on top of an already established print and digital brand, the Hockey News is there to cover all major hockey stories from around the world. Visit thn.com/deal to get the best value on a subscription to the Hockey News. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs Fan, and with me as always, my wingers, Ricky Squid Vaive. How are we keeping today, Squid?
Oh, fantastic. Good round of golf this morning. Screwed it up on the last two holes. I was 3 over and then went 3 over on the last 2 holes. But it's not bad, 78.
You'll take that any day of the week with that. But, near the end of the year, so the days are getting a little shorter, so the score should be getting a little bit shorter too, okay? So this one you should be putting up those good numbers.
Well, now, they punched the greens, so the greens were a little tough to putt on. But like I said, I had it going pretty good, and then all of a sudden, bogey 17, doubles 18. But
well, that'll do it.
Yep.
Now, we have a pretty interesting guest today. Played a long time in NHL, mostly with the Buffalo Sabres. He was there through the infancy stages and through a lot of the growth. And I'm referring to, of course, 2-time 50-goal scorer Danny Gare. You never played with Danny, but you played against him. He wasn't really a particularly big guy, but word was he was extremely tough to play against.
Oh, there's no question. He was a real competitive little bugger, and he loved to chirp too. I gotta tell you, he was really quick with the chirps and the comebacks, and but boy, yeah, he was very, very difficult to play against, and he was a great player as well. So that made it even tougher because he was so good. But yet he'd run me over too. I mean, he wouldn't even hesitate. And a guy like him would be a perfect player in today's game as well, because he's fast. He was fast. He was skilled, but he didn't take any crap either, and he'd run me over.
Well, that's great. I mean, before we get to Danny, we do have a couple of things. Free agency is upon us tomorrow as we're recording this. The draft just took place a couple of days ago. And always a few surprises, but didn't look like there was a whole heck of a lot this year. We'll get Danny's take on this when we bring him on in a couple of minutes, but maybe just once again, I know we've talked about this in the past, but just take us through what some of these kids would be experiencing on draft day from your own experience.
Well, I would imagine they'd probably be experiencing pretty much what I did because of the way it was done this year because of the pandemic. Because I was at home, mine was a phone draft, and I was just sitting there waiting for the phone call. And so although I know they had cameras and everything with all the first round guys and everything, and they got to see the celebrations and everything, which we didn't have. Obviously, the technology back then wasn't like it is today. But you're anxious. You're kind of waiting and wondering what the heck's going to happen. Where am I going to go? I felt bad for a couple of them. The kid from Quebec there, that the goal scorer Lapierre, they always went to him on his camera, and he was waiting, and finally Washington took him late in the first round. But it's not easy, because they're all, I want to be in the top 10. I want to be in the top 12, and that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, 15 goes by and you haven't been drafted. So it's frustrating for them to sit there and watch that.
Well, it's always, it's always tough. I mean, I love watching a draft because the first round, every player is a dynamic player. It's a great pick. He's this, he's that, he's everything. And, and of course, these guys, it's almost like they all have magic wands because every player has the same bio and they haven't even stepped on the ice yet. But I would have to say with Matt Murray now, and this actually kills us as Leafs fans to say this, but with Matt Murray now going to Ottawa, they look to me like they could be the winner coming out of this with those 2 blue chip prospects that look like that. They've they've got the makings of what could be a pretty good hockey club.
Well, with what they've already got, and they've got a couple of guys in the minors, Batherson and a couple other forwards. They got Kachuk, they got Shabbat, they got a real good defenseman in the draft. They got Stutzel, who's a heck of a player, and they got another player late in the first round who's a big centerman, I think, or maybe it was a defenseman. But now they got Matt Murray, so they're solid in goal. They're solid on defense. This is a team that could surprise a lot of people this year. I don't think it'll be a big surprise this year, but 2 years from now or 3, they could be one of the top teams in the league with the way that they've been drafting and putting these guys in the minors. And boy, oh boy, they could be a team to reckon with down the road.
Well, if you look at any winning team, that usually starts with the minor level at the AHL, and their Belleville team was obviously one of the superior teams before the pandemic shut everything down. So all the pieces are in place. Let's see what they do with it. Now, with free agency starting tomorrow, it's interesting to see teams like Nashville trying to set themselves up and position themselves to make some moves. Even Chicago today, letting Corey Crawford, not going to re-sign him. A number of players being bought out. Kyle Turris bought out. Boy, how about this? Next 7 years, he gets $2 million a year for the next 7 years coming out of Nashville. Very nice. Of course, there's once again, and Taylor Hall.
I guess Arizona apparently are moving on from him. So
yeah, probably wants too much money.
More than likely, yeah. I would imagine that's probably the reason. But I mean, you got a lot of great players out there that are free agents.
That's what, and that doesn't mean they can't still sign them. So there's still lots of this.
Well, you look at a guy, especially a guy like you just mentioned, Turris, who he's a pretty good player. I don't think he's ever really lived up to where he was drafted, 3rd overall, I believe it was, 2nd or 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
But now that he's been bought out and he's going to make $2 million a year for 7 years, he can go and sign somewhere for $1 million, and he's still making $3 million a year. So
no, that's exactly right. And again, it's like we talked about a couple of weeks ago. The grass maybe isn't always greener on the other side. When he left Ottawa, he had the perfect little fit there, and then Nashville just never worked out. Now, of course, our Maple Leafs, 15th pick, and according to the 500 GMs online and on social media, they've been getting ripped up and down. They've been taken to the woodshed. Oh, my goodness. I mean, the kid hasn't even jumped on a plane yet, and they're already they're just going through hell already in purgatory. But you can imagine tomorrow, Squid, with free agency starting, if they don't sign Pietrangelo and they bring in Taylor Hall and they got to bring in Torrey Krug and they got to every free agent, Wayne Simmons, every free agent better come to Toronto tomorrow. They're just going to get absolutely destroyed.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you know what? I mean, they got a lot of picks this year, and they got a lot of young players, and their first pick in the first round, 15th overall. I mean, we don't know anything about this guy. We've never seen him play. A lot of the scouts have, but they're not always correct either. So, I mean, this guy could turn into a really, really good forward for the Maple Leafs at some point. I would imagine it'll be 2 or 3 years down the road at least, if not more. But, you just never know. I mean, and I remember the Detroit Red Wings, a lot of times in their drafts, they would always go for those European guys that were skilled and look who they got, Datsuk and Zetterberg, in the 200s. They drafted both of those guys. So I think when you get to that point, you just take a shot at a lot of the Europeans that have that skill and the skating ability. And then you hope that perhaps, they get better and better as the years go on. And that's exactly what the Maple Leafs did. And, because you never know, you might get a Datsuk or a Zetterberg somewhere down there.
And that's what they're always looking for. And as a matter of fact, they said a lot of the statistical data showing weight and size and height, that was all done pre-pandemic and back in the fall. And the one kid they listed at 100, he's 180 pounds now. So anyway, it's obviously very interesting. It's that time of the year when there's going to be lots of newsy things to talk about. Next week, obviously, we'll have lots to talk about, but I think it's about time now we go and listen to what Danny has to say. Squid, today's guest is a longtime NHLer who, after a strong junior career with the Calgary Centennials, was noted for his 8 years with the Buffalo Sabres, a two-time 50-goal scorer, a captain, a member of the Sabres Hall of Fame, along with the retirement of his number, also represented Canada a couple of times in Canada Cups. Please welcome Danny Gare. Danny, how are we doing today?
I'm good, guys. I really appreciate the offer to come on here and talk to an old buddy of mine, and sometimes an old foe, I must say, with the Leafs.
Which we'll get into.
My good friends, Rick, Squid, Vaive, and Mike. Pleasure to meet you two.
All right, great, Danny. Squid, I think you want to start things off here, so I think you got a question for him. Let's get it in the box.
I think the biggest thing is the nickname. And okay, so I know from, and you may have a different spin on this, but I heard the real story from Terry Martin and Derek Smith, 2-year-old buddies. So how did you get the nickname Tickets?
Well, those are a couple old two roommates of mine, Derek and Terry, as you know, played with the Leafs with you. And actually, it was before that, Rick, when I first came here to Buffalo. It's like any place at the time, especially, teams that were in our division, Boston, Toronto, Montreal, hard to get a ticket, hard to get a ticket. So we were rookie. I was a rookie, and I lived actually with Larry Carriere. We lived in an apartment complex, and Lee Fogelin, the number 1 pick that year, and Morris Titanic, the ship, was with us. And one of the things we did as being young guys, single guys, after you win a few games, you'd go out and have a few pops and meet a few pretty young girls, and they'd always be asking for tickets. So I would give them and say, yeah, I'll get you tickets, no problem. But back then, you only got 2 tickets, right? And the no-no was going to the veterans and asking them for their tickets. Are you nuts? Are you crazy? So what happened was a couple times, I guess there were, 4 or 5 young girls at the ticket box office, and Punch Imlach had heard about it, and he wasn't too happy about me, and they had to give him tickets because they said Danny Gare left them for me, and I didn't. I forgot about it or whatever. So what happened was Larry Carriere got called up in November into his office, and I don't know if you ever played for Punch, but he always had to wear a suit and tie to go up to the office. And we always left one there in the trainer's room. So Larry goes up. He thought he was getting traded. I was going over to Chef's with Hoagie and Morris, and I said, geez, I hope everything okay. We'll be at Chef's after, because we hung out. We were single. And so he goes up, and I guess Punch says to him, he was really nervous. Larry used to sweat from upstairs, downstairs, everywhere. And he goes, hey, you tell that Gare, this is Punch telling Larry Carriere, you tell that Gare to quit giving away all those damn tickets to those girls. And he said, by the way, they're pretty good looking too, he said, like this. So Larry comes over to Chef's, and, he was like, he starts pointing, he goes, you. I go, what? Are you okay? Are you still here? He goes, you. I'm going to call you tickets. He goes, I'm going to call you tickets. I said, what are you talking about? And then he tells the story. So that was tickets there. And the other one I tell is when I went back to Vancouver, when I made the team that summer prior, when I was drafted, I told all my buddies, if I ever make the Sabres, they could come down. I'll get them tickets for the first game in Vancouver. Well, guess what? 8 busloads came, and it cost me $3,482 for tickets. So tickets here, tickets there.
Well, that's a great start to that one. So, and speaking of which, speaking of starts, this leads right into what the next thing I want to talk about. The draft is come and gone.
Yeah.
Maybe the listeners, Squid has talked about this himself, but maybe let the listeners know the experience that you went through on your draft day, sitting and waiting to get picked, and maybe what these kids were experiencing that day.
Well, it's, something you work for as a youngster, and Rick will tell you that, your draft day is a special day. And, it changes obviously with times, and we've seen it, going from the kids being in the arena to where we saw just the other day, where guys were at home and zooming in or on whatever computer they were on and seeing the celebration, which is awesome. But I remember it was funny because back in '74, I'd had a pretty good year with the Calgary Centennials that year. I broke the record for most goals by a right winger in the Western Hockey League, and then I broke the record for most penalty minutes. So that was a tough time to play, and it seemed to help me, and ended up being drafted just before that by John Ferguson and the Winnipeg Jets with the WHA. And John was really persistent in trying to get me there, which was awesome. I mean, I love the late John Ferguson, great man, great player. I watched him for many years. I was a big fan of the way he played, and a real special person. And then getting drafted by the Sabres, it was funny because I was out mowing the lawn in Nelson, British Columbia. And I'm mowing the lawn, and in Nelson, there's a lot of hills, so you had to go up some hills and down there. And I'm sweating profusely. And then my mom comes out to the porch and goes, Daddy. And I got, I can't hear anything. So she's waving her arms. And I turn the mower off, and she goes, Punch Imlach's on the phone. Buffalo. I said, oh, really? So I, run in the house and get on the phone. And here's Punch on the phone and saying, hey, Danny, we're proud to, draft you in the second round. We'll be getting in touch with you. Here's John Anderson, who John ran. John Anderson was their director of player personnel at the time. And I was very excited. So, yeah, it was a hard thing to decide, because the money was pretty good back then because you had two teams bidding on you. We felt it was good money, not in today's world. But anyways, I ended up, Punch flew out, which was unbelievable. He flew out on Father's Day from Toronto, and we met, and I signed a contract, and always wanted to play in the NHL, and that's what the decision was. And I saw Buffalo was a up-and-coming team as they made the playoffs the prior year against Montreal, and I watched it, and I thought it was a pretty strong up-and-coming team, and I might have an opportunity to play for them. So, yeah, that's what happened.
Now, was there a little intimidation on your part meeting Punch for the first time, especially, as a kid growing up, his resume coming from the 60s with the Maple Leafs, and here you are meeting this legendary coach, GM, walking into your house and sitting talking to you. How did that conversation all go? Or were you just sort of in a trance?
It was an honor, really, to be what we did, we met in Gare. I flew out from Nelson and met him at the airport because he wanted to get on a plane and go right back. And Punch was just great. He was, those years, Punch was, he came to Nelson a year later, and they had a Danny Gare Day or something. He flew out with his wife, Dodo, and he loved it there. But I've always, Punch was, we got along in the early years. Towards the end, obviously, it got a little trying, but no, he was great. I remember signing the contract, and he gives me a signing bonus, which was $150,000 back then. It was a lot of money. And 1974, and he says, I wish you could buy a beer, but it's Sunday. He says, the reason I give you this check. He said, you got to go right back to Nelson because your parents don't want to see that check. And I said, thanks, Punch. He was great. It was awesome. And all his accomplishments prior to that. I used to watch him. Toronto Maple Leafs were one of my favorite teams growing up, watching Hockey Night in Canada, Dickie Duff, Davey Keon, little guys that I liked. Yeah. And,
Well, so, I had a similar one with Punch as well, obviously, because he traded for me when he came back to Toronto. And I remember Billy Nerlego and I, when we finally got back to Toronto, because we met them on the road, and Punch, he wanted us to go up to his office, and we had to put the tie and everything on, like you said, and we get up there and we sit down, and we're like, we're kind of nervous because it's Punch Imlach. This guy's won how many Stanley Cups, and he just says to us, he goes, okay, guys, you're going to get a real good chance to play here. He said, all I'm going to tell you is just keep your damn noses clean. And Billy and I looked at each other and went, yeah. Of course, we didn't, but anyway, things worked out pretty good anyway.
So now, Danny, your first year, you arrived in Buffalo, 74. the team is still fairly new as an expansion team. They've been making a little bit of progress, but all of a sudden you arrive and they have this breakout year, finish first, get to the Stanley Cup final. How was that whole year for you as a rookie coming in? And secondly, when you were coming in, what kind of expectations were putting you by management, if any at all, as a player?
You just don't know, and I think Rick can relate to this. You work to get to that position, obviously, to be drafted, but then you go to your first training camp, and I remember looking at Gilbert Perreault and Rick Martin and Jim Schoen. I wanted to ask them for their autographs. I mean, that's the type of guys that it's really awesome. I mean, it's kind of intimidating, I guess, is what I'm saying. But you have to, buckle up the chin strap, as they say, and go do what you're supposed to do. And my role was I felt that I could score, like Rick. I mean, the same thing. And you have to do what got you there. And I'd fight a few times here and there, but I was put on a line with Luce and Ramsey, and that just clicked. I mean, they played with Larry Mickey the year before, and I remember going to training camp, and Larry Mickey was there at rookie camp with 100 guys trying to get his job and keep his job. And, we went at it a bit, but, it's like anything else when they cut you down, and we moved. Actually, we had our camps back in St. Catharines then. And we moved they cut down to 26 players back to Buffalo. And I remember going to the Statler Hilton there. My roommate was Peter McNabb, and Peter was, he was a second-year player for them. And, we're talking a lot with him, and Bill Height I knew from Western Canada a little bit. I played against him, and I didn't know a lot of guys, so you try to take what you can. And Larry Mickey was there too, and he was great. He said, when I finally made the team and kind of took his spot, I sat next to him, and he would help me shoot high on this guy, watch out for Plager. He'll come across, try to hip check you, stuff like that. And then it was the first game that really kind of how it went was we went out against the Boston Bruins, and we were checking line and line up against Cashman, Esposito, and Hodge, and Orr, and Vadney on defense, and Cheesy in the net. And the puck came back to Shoney, went around in there, and Shoney took a shot from the blue line rammer. Craig Ramsey kind of whipped on it, and I got the rebound and put it in. And at 18 seconds, it's like the fastest goal as a rookie.
That's correct.
And it was unbelievable. It was like surreal, is my point. And I go on the bench, and I'm sitting here with a puck because Craig gave it to me, and I'm going, geez, maybe I belong. You just don't know. And then we had a great year, and Rick, you can understand getting the confidence, I think, is what it was, and knowing that you can help the team, and you can also make a difference. So that was a big year for me going to the finals, and with the team just ran a little short.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's finding out that you belong and you have that confidence, knowing that you can play with these guys. And I mean, well, you started in your last year junior with like 240 minutes in penalties or whatever the heck you had. I mean, and I was looking at that, but he also scored 50 goals twice in the National Hockey League, which is kind of, I think even today is kind of the mark for a goal scorer. But you were more than that. You. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think I played a pretty similar game. Well, but I think what I'm getting at is, what I'm getting at though is that you played an all-around game, and you were a pest out there. And I remember playing against you, and you were quick-witted, and we would chirp, and you would have a perfect comeback, like real quick. And you'd run guys over as well. So, I mean, I loved it. I thought as a right winger myself, I thought you were a great right winger that played the game, gave 100%, but could score goals. And I always admired that.
So, Danny, I think some of the things you just touched on, that sort of defining moment when you felt you belonged. And yours came 18 seconds right after your first game. So that's a pretty good start right there. But take us maybe through some of or if you experience some of the, because think about this, like you're a junior guy, you want to play your whole life to get to the National Hockey League, that's your goal. Right. You finally get there. Now all of a sudden, reality's setting in because, okay, I'm here. Now I got to stay here. What do I have to do to stay here? Because these guys are actually quite good. What kind of surprises have you experienced maybe your first time through the league, maybe playing other players with the travel and all those type of things that go with being a National Hockey Leaguer?
Well, I think it's just experiencing everything. You know, your first year, like going to the Montreal Forum was like the tabernacle of all. You know, going to the Maple Leaf Gardens where I watched every night on Hockey Night Canada. Playing against Bobby Orr and the Boston Bruins, Gare, you know, like things like that in the old Olympia. I mean, playing in those buildings were. I mean, I was fortunate when I look back. I mean, I played in every original 6 building but one, and that's the old Madison Square Garden in New York. But to say that and then to be traveling around and playing against guys you watched, you know, on TV, it was, and again, just embracing the moment and enjoying it. But nervous and anxious before games, oh my God, it would be 10 nervous pisses before the Boston Bruins because I knew I'd have to fight Secord, Jonathan, Wensink, O'Reilly, you name it, Cash. I mean, Philadelphia, you go in there was Selesky, there was Schultz, there was like, you name it, DuPont. And the Islanders later were the same, but it was always, you know, intense. Back in the late 70s and 80s, it was intense, tough hockey. Yeah. But boy, when you won and you happened to score a couple goals, Squid, it was the best feeling in the world. It was the best feeling in the world that you did, you prepared, and that gave you the, you know, the ability to continue to play on. But I'm going to tell you a quick story here about my first year. Okay, now my late father Ernie, was my mentor, and he played in the old Western National League, the Trail Smoke Eaters and the Kimberley Dynamiters and Spokane Jets, and they won an Allen Cup one year, I think, back in the day. But I remember Dad, you know, when I first made it, he helped me get through a lot of this to get to where I was. You know, he said, you have to do this, work out 3 times a week. He was the athletic director of a small university there at Notre Dame in Nelson. And then he coached the college team, and he coached the senior team later. And he said, you know, you got to shoot 200 pucks a day, 300 pucks a day. And then, you know, you'd have to box, learn how to hit a speed, heavy bag, whatever. But he was always, when I made the NHL, he'd send me letters, okay? And we talk on the phone, obviously. Mm-hmm. But he'd send me these notes and letters. He always liked to have longhand, and he would say, Danny, he says, you know, you got to keep doing this. You got to keep working on this. You got to keep, you know. But he said, what I'd really like you to do someday, he said, is talk to Gilbert Perreault about helping you with your deking ability. Like, I just shot the puck. I had, so listen to this, Squid. So I'm like, Dad, shit, I just want his autograph. I can't even talk to him. Like, you know, he's like a god. And Gilbert was a quiet guy, as you know, right, Rick? And I was like, so finally, I think I had the balls one time. I was in January, late January. I had 20 goals or something in my rookie year. And I asked Gilbert after practice, I go, Gilbert, would you help me? You know, come here. Would you help me with deking and moves, how you make your moves left to right, and how you beat the defenseman? He turns to me in his French accent, and he looks at me right like this. Danny, I don't know how I do them. I just do them. And skates off the ice. And I said, keep on doing them, Gilbert. So that was it. He was
pretty darn good at it.
Oh, he was the best I ever saw with the puck. I mean, yeah.
Watching him go end to end many, many times. And, you know, and I always thought, and maybe you could touch on this, because he's a player that I always thought could do more. I always thought he could be a 50-goal scorer and a 100-point guy.
He didn't want to.
He didn't want to. He was happy.
No, and he didn't mean that's not disrespectful to Gilbert. It was this was his mindset, Rick. It was, Danny, you score 50, you score 40, they want 50. You score 50, they want 60. Yeah. He says, stay at 40 and around 80, 90 points. And they don't have to.
Yeah, he didn't want.
He could have had 50 goals easily.
Oh yeah, he didn't want. He didn't want the pressure of having to do that year after year.
No, he wasn't that way. And, I agree. Yeah. He wasn't that way. Great man, though. Great.
Now,
man.
Danny. Now, Danny, speaking of all those veterans, was there a moment, you had it in your mind after you scored that first goal, and it obviously took a lot of pressure off you right away and a little bit of gives you some breathing room. Was there a moment you woke up and you thought, I really made it. I've been accepted. Was there a sort of a gesture from the players, not your initiation, which you can tell us what you had to do, by the way, if they got you on that, but was there a gesture from some of the players that made you really feel you were a part of it? Just like you're talking about parole now.
The first year, I think,
yeah.
You just earned it. Guys, certainly Rammer and Luce were great mentors with me because they sat next to me in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Jim Schoenfeld was a great mentor. Roger Crozier, the late Roger Crozier was a great, he'd have us over at his house all the time for dinner. And we had a good group of guys. Rick Dudley was there, and Duds was great. Brian Spencer, I knew him from hockey schools back in British Columbia, the connection. We had a great group of guys, but they were young, and we were just learning as we went along as how good we were. I remember beating out the Canadians. I think a big turning point for me was when the first game after we beat Chicago in the first round of in the first year, as we marched to the finals, we beat the Canadian. I scored an overtime goal to beat them with Honoré Richard falling on my back into the net or the boards and through Ken Dryden. But that was a big turning point for myself and the team and the organization and the fans, because they lost the year before, or when they said thank you Sabres to the Canadians, and we went on to beat them in 6 games, and then we went against the Flyers and lost in 6. But you just felt the confidence and the fact that the ability you could stay there and you could perform. And I just don't know why we never reached that pinnacle again. I do a little bit because some of the moves that were made, but hey, what do our game, like my dad said,
you don't have control over that, correct?
Yeah. You were Rick. As my father said, Danny, I bitch about this by not playing on the power play. As the coach put me out more. He says, you're a professional. You signed a contract to be the best you can be, no matter what. And that was a great, a great guidance thought by him. And it's what I played for. It's how I played.
Well, I gotta ask you. You talked about playing in those iconic original 6 buildings.
Right.
I played in all of those as well, except for the old Madison Square Gardens.
Right.
And so we're going to go to the Odd, and I got to play at the Odd. And talk about how great that place was. Well, with the exception of the dressing room, I guess. I sat there and I was against a brick wall that was the outside wall. And if it was in the middle of the winter, you'd freeze if you leaned against the wall. But how exciting it was in the Odd, the way it was built and everything, just like all those other original 6 buildings compared to, the big buildings that they have today.
Well, yeah, I remember the first time I practiced there, I went up and and I walked all the way up to the Oranges, top of the level there with I walked up by myself and I wanted you to see what it looked like from up above, because I've never seen a building that steep and that many, we only had like 8,000 or 9,000, I think, in Calgary at the old corral, or if that. But and I looked and I almost fell down the steps. It was so steep. And it was such a great atmosphere, Rick. You played there. The fans were fantastic. We had great rivalries with Montreal, Toronto, Boston. We had some, and it was just, it was just you went out and you wanted to play well in front of this group of people that really, followed you. They adored the hockey back then and the players, and it was just fun to be around the guys I played with. Our teammates we used to come with that shoot 100 miles an hour, and it was funny because you say that when you came to Buffalo, and I remember going up to play the Leafs, and everybody wanted to be like, and it was a smaller ice surface. It was 193 by 83. I think it was about 7 feet short and a couple feet on the width. Toronto,
good for us goal scorers, though.
Yeah, good for us little too. He didn't have to skate. But my point is that we used to go up to Toronto. We'd drive up either Saturday morning for the game on a Saturday night. And, back then it was, my first couple of Sittler and Lanny and Tiger Williams and, Salming and Palmatier and all these guys. And they had a good team. But the ice was so good that they called it jet ice, I think, back then. And it was so big. We used to fly because we used to beat them all the time. And it was fun because everything was so much bigger. It was so much easier.
It's funny you mentioned the oranges because
I
did the exact same thing. I looked up a whole bunch of times and I thought, I wonder what it looks like from up there. And I went up there as well. And I was looking down and I went, holy cow, like I don't know how people sit up here. Yeah.
I can tell you two boys that I sat there and those seats are straight up and I can't believe how more guys didn't fall over because those railings were not very high and those seats, their stairs were straight up. And I can tell you, those Buffalo and Toronto fans, when I'd be there, they weren't exactly drinking pop all night.
Yeah.
No. There were a few people we didn't see them.
Now, Danny, 1977, you're made captain of the Sabres. Got to be one of the biggest honors. And Rick, you can even speak to this too. I mean, as a player could ever receive from a team. That day, how did that all unfold? Did Marcel give you the news, a Pronovo, or was it Punch, or how did it all happen?
Yeah, it was a little unexpected, obviously. The year before, Jim Schoenfeld had some issues with Punch and over his captaincy. And so we go into camp, and we're at the end of training camp. And like Rick was saying, it was such a small little area, like the dressing room and the coach's room was even it was like a cubicle. I mean, Marcel on the other side smoking cigarettes, putting smoke everywhere. And there was myself. He asked Gilbert to come in and Shoney. And so we're sitting there and I didn't know what was going on. And he turns to all three of us and he says, I want you all to be co-captains this year. He's meaning me, Gilbert, and Jim. So there was a little silence, and then Shoney says, no. Shoney said, no, I don't think so. He said, no. He goes like this, and he hesitates a bit, and he turns to me, and he points. He said, Danny should be the captain. And then Gilbert just said, yes, Danny should be captain, like that. And it was simple. It was just, I was like shocked. I was like, holy shit. And I'm honored. Don't get me wrong. I was like, I sat back. I was set back. And it was like Punch or Marcel goes, okay, I'll tell Punch. And I said, well, can I just say one thing before anybody? I said, I really, I'm kind of shocked, but I'm honored because, these two guys here, were my, they're the leaders of the team. They're Gilbert and Jimmy Shoney were the leaders. And I was like a third-year player, but they saw enough in me. So I said to them, before we walk into that dressing room and I get announced, I said, I want Shoney, I need every bit of your help. I need every bit of Gilbert's help, of any veteran in that room. But I want you guys to introduce me to the team. And they did. They walked in first, and Marcel walked in, and they said, Jim and Gilbert have something to say. And they said, Danny, guys, is our new captain, and we look forward to him leading, and we're all going to work together as a group here, and so forth and so on. So, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it is a great feeling. I mean,
it is. It is.
To think that they want you to be the leader of an NHL team. I mean, first of all, your goal is just to get there.
Right.
And then, you have success. And then all of a sudden they say, we want you to be our leader. And I mean, that is a great honor. And especially when you're amongst players that, I was in a room with Boris Salming and,
right.
How
did they tell you, Squid? How did you find out when you were named captain?
I actually found out from Harold. He just told me. He said, you're our captain. Nobody asked me or anything. It was just,
Yeah.
But that's the way it was in Toronto.
That's the way it was
Power.
back. Yeah. I mean, it was. Yeah, I agree totally. I agree. Yeah, it was.
But I wanted to ask you also about your brother. I mean, because you're kind of a hockey family, obviously, and your brother is a scout. Is he still scouting?
He is. Yeah, my brother. Actually, my older brother Ernie. He played. He came to the Leaf camp. He also played WHA a few games, but ended up going back to get his teaching degree and played with Spokane Jets and won a couple Allen Cups too. We're Western people, so they, he married a girl there from there. And then Maury, my younger brother, we were a skating family. Squid. Yeah. My sisters were all figure skaters. My one sister, Glenda, is married to Tom Rennie, the head of Hockey Canada.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, Glenda is. And we stay together and think a lot about obviously the game and where it's headed and what we did in the past or whatever. But yeah, Maury's still scouting. He scouted for about 16 years. He went to Northern Michigan on a scholarship. He coached there and won a championship, NCAA championship with Rick Com. And now he's with the Carolina Hurricanes as a scout. So he enjoys it. So it's good to have him around Buffalo and hear all his. He worked a lot with Rick Dudley, and I'm a big fan. So
well, so am I. But boy, I'll tell you what, I had him as a coach. I got to tell you, he was one of the more prepared coaches.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, did he have a temper?
Well, hey. I'll tell you, Rick Dudley, one of the best fights I ever saw was him and Kelly, Bob Kelly, in the playoffs when we went my first year. They were like just jackhammers going back and forth. And Duds was tough. He was real tough. Yeah, he was tough.
So now we're talking about Buffalo. You know it was going to come to this at some point, Danny, but here we've got it with the close proximity to Toronto. There is obviously a rival that was built up. It started right when Punch went there. And of course, almost like Buffalo and Miami in football, Buffalo can get 0-14, but if they win the 2 games against the Dolphins, they're happy, the fans. So it's almost the same thing. I mean, did you guys, the players, get all of that? And could you believe that it got to the intensity that it did over your years?
I mean, I embraced that too. I mean, I can remember, like I said earlier, when we went up and most of the team were Canadians, right? Yeah. I'd say 90% of our teams back then were Canadians, but to play in Toronto or even Montreal for that matter, but Toronto was a rivalry. It was only an hour and a half drive up to QEW and, everybody,
probably about 4 hours now with the traffic. Now.
Yeah, and now I can't even get over there. But that's another story. But no, I think it's because of proximity, and we had a lot. And when I played, I'll bet you 35% of our fans were for Canadians from St. Catharines, Hamilton. Niagara Falls, they were a big part because they could get tickets in Buffalo. They couldn't get them in Toronto. And that was a real part of the rivalry. And then it grew and grew and grew. And now you see, when Toronto plays, and the Sabres haven't had obviously some great years, but the rink's half full of Toronto. They would never stay overnight, right? Because they didn't want to spend the money, Rick, we were up and back. But I remember one time and we said to Floyd Smith, I said, if we win tonight, against the Leafs, we're going to stay over. And we're going to, and, he said, I said, no, we talked to Punch. We're going to stay over. Because we normally played Sunday back at home. We're away Saturday and back in the auditorium on Sunday. Well, we had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off. So we ended up winning. I'll never forget that night because it was a mess. But it was fun.
I got to tell you a good story about going to Buffalo as a Maple Leaf. And I remember in the odd, when during the game, if the Sabres were up, like say, 4-1 or 4-0 or whatever, they'd be chanting 1, 2, 3, 4, we want 5.
Right.
Well, on this particular night, we're getting trounced. And I think it was 12-1 at the time or something. and the fans started going
It
5,
was.
10.
It
We
was,
want
'cause Sittler told
15.
me, yeah, yeah, it was 12-3. It's 12-3 or 12-4 we beat you, because I remember Daryl Sittler telling me later in a golf tournament, if I hear that one more time, I'm going to kill myself. He goes.
Now, any game
But yeah.
stand out for you from your time at the Leafs, but just the rivalry, like some sort of rivalry type stories, like playing against Toronto that stick out in your mind?
Well, I'll tell you a good one. The night I scored my first 50th, we played the Leafs, and my second year. And I remember Richard Martin had 49 goals, and Rico was, I'm on a checking line with Luce and Ramsey, and I had 47. But it was like, everything. Played the Leafs the last game. I think Gordy McRae was in the net. I think it was Palmetier that was hurt or something. But anyways, so right before the game in the dressing room, my old crafty veteran, as I call him, Freddie Stanfield, comes up to me, and before we're going, about a half hour before we're on the ice, he goes, "Hey, come here." We're in the bathroom. And he goes, "You're at 47." He said, you may not get there again. He says, you might think about trying to get 50 tonight, because really the season, we'd already set places in the standings and all that. But I didn't even it never even came to my mind, because it was just Rico, everybody, and Rico deserved it. Don't get me wrong. He was a great goal scorer. So we line up, and because we always check the top line, Luce and Ramsey. So I line up, we line up Sittler, Lanny McDonald, and guess who's on my side? Tiger Williams. So Tiger, who I played against many years in the Western Canada League, and we fought back then. He was in Speedy Creek, and I was in Calgary. And he goes, "Gare, you ain't even going to get a sniff tonight. You get nothing. You're getting Zippo." He's going like this to me. And Tiger, right? So I'm going, why don't you just go yourself, and I got mad. I got pissed off, and it was just the first period, neither one of us scored a goal, but in the second I scored one to make it 48. Going in the third period, power play came, and Floyd Smith had put me on the power play because I had 48, because I only had 6 that year, 6 power play goals. Yeah. And I get 1, and then we're tied with about 15 minutes to go in the third period, and then we get another power play. And Rico took a shot from the point. I got the rebound and put it over. I think it was McRae was in the net, and I got 50. And poor Rico, he played the rest of the game and never got it, which is very unfortunate. But I didn't play Squid. I didn't play the rest of the game. But when I got the puck, I go by the bench. I said, "Hey, Tiger, asshole!" And he starts screaming at me. He tried to jump on the bench, and it was funny. It was funny.
See, I told you he was like that, Mike, as a player.
I know. Like he's September. Well, like just on that line, you're right, Squid. Now, you guys had, I don't know if this is you, Danny, but the Leafs weren't alone. You guys had rivalries against Montreal, Boston, Quebec, Philadelphia, some of those playoff series. Let me tell you one quick story here about you that I got from somebody. Barry Dean, when he was playing in Philadelphia, I went to go watch the playoffs one year, and him and his brother and I played together. So we went to 1978, go watch the playoffs, and they were playing you guys. So I happened to make an offhanded comment to Barry that I won't wish you guys bad tonight, but Barry Dean. He was Dizzy. He was taken behind Mel Bridgman in the draft. And
I played
you played against him, and he said,
"Go ahead."
I said to him, I won't wish you guys bad tonight, but I love the way Joe Perreault plays, so I'm going to be focusing on him tonight, Barry, so just let you know. So he says, well, you better get a quick look because he's not going to finish the game. And I said, what are you guys going to do? You're going to like goon him tonight? And he said, nope, because what's going to happen is he's going to get hurt. He's not going to play. He won't be there. As a matter of fact, a lot of these guys, it's very common. They all do the same thing coming here. The only guy who's going to show up tonight is Danny Gare. And our guys respect the hell out of him. And he's the only guy in that team. Now, he did have a couple other guys on there, Fogelin and Schoenfeld that fight. But as it turned out, you ended up with 6 points in that 5-game series. That night, by the way, you got in a fight. And he ended up with 6 points, 16 penalty minutes, and a +3. And Jill had 1 goal and 1 assist and was -3. Now, this isn't to knock him, but this is just to say that's how it was in those days. And I don't think fans today can really appreciate what it was like playing in that time, especially going into that building.
Yeah, Rick, the worst. It was the worst. And they knew how to use it too. The fans were brutal, but they were a tough team, but they had talent too. Like, I remember seeing Bernie Perrant after that series, or a couple when I retired, when he won 2 Conn Smythes in a row. Okay, like when they won the 2 cups, Rick.
Yeah.
And Bernie goes, "Danny, I never played better in all my life." That's just what he did. He was unbelievable. We couldn't score on him. And you're right. There was a Philly flu. It wasn't just the Sabres. There was a lot of teams. It was an intimidating building, very intimidating. And they backed it up. And it's just the way the game was back then.
I got a good story for you about
But
Philly.
thank you.
So we're having a horrible year. We're not making the playoffs. Our last game of the year was in Philadelphia. So
yeah,
Harold decides that we're going to charter to Philly. We're going to play. The planes are going to go on to Atlantic City. We're going to bus there after the game, and we're going to stay there till 4 in the morning, and then we're going to charter home. I'm thinking, why the hell are we? Because we're not even making the damn playoffs. And all of a sudden, in the last week or 2 of the season, I think about 8 guys went down, injuries and this and that. Well, we had more guys in the press box that night than we had on the bench. And I think we lost 7-1. I think we only had 14 shots on goal. And the only goal, I scored the goal, and it was from about 10 feet inside the blue line, a slapper. And that was probably the best opportunity we had all night. So you're right. It was a very intimidating place to go into when you're playing against a team like Philadelphia in the old office.
Yeah, well, I know keeping along that line, I mean, where I want to go with this, I mean, I want a couple of things I'd like to get into with you guys. And Squid, you can jump in this too. But Danny, I mean, I again, for both you guys, there's sort of, it's played out for many, many times. They talk about the code in sports. And during your period, a player of your stature who was a goal scorer and wasn't afraid to fight, earned your ice, every inch of ice you earned. You should there was a level of respect that was given to players such as yourself. Like if you had to deal with somebody, obviously, you didn't have to accept a challenge from some new guy who was trying to make a name for himself. You shouldn't be subject to a shot behind the back or shot after the whistle or something like that. Would you say that would be almost a fair assessment, the way the players handled it in those days?
I think that's fairly fair. But as you made it towards, the playoffs, and as the games got more important, they didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
They would have taken you down any way they could. I mean, if you were an asset, they wanted you out of the game. But I mean, it was, I think, as you earn more of you might get a rookie come in and try to test the waters, but you knew who you were up against. I knew, like I said, I knew the guys in Boston that I had to deal with. I knew the guys against the Islanders I had to deal with, whether it was Nystrom or Howitt, or, I can go on, Gary Hart. I mean, these are the guys that would come after you. But in saying that, as you went on in your career, and when I got traded to Detroit, I thought I had 260 penalty minutes one year, just so that the Red Wings, back then they were the Dead Wings, were to try to get some respect. And I was 30 years old, and I said, I don't want to be doing this, But it was. I think the code was there, but when it got to a time of importance, and it was more the will to win, and any way you had to do it, teams would do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would definitely agree with you on that. And and I think the big thing too, I think yourself and myself as players, and I learned that from John Brophy as well early in my career, that you know what, we got guys that can take care of that stuff for you, but if you don't show up, they're going to run you out of the building and run you out of the league at some point. So you got to stick up for yourself. So that's exactly what I did. I didn't win a lot of fights, but I showed up.
Rick, I'm going to tell you one that I remember in Detroit. When I was in Detroit, battling for a playoff spot, and that's when Brad Park came and took over the coaching. I don't know if you remember the big brawl we had with Probert and McGill. Remember?
Yeah.
I'm in front of the net, and I'm with you, and we went at it. And then it just kind of slid away, and Lane Lambert and someone else got another fight, and then it got crazy, and then the bench cleared. Probert and McGill were going at it near your bench, near the glass in Maple Leaf Gardens, and they were going hard. And Bobby McGill was a tough player. He stood up and did what he had to do, and Proby was still a young kid trying to earn his stripes. So I was watching it. We and you were watching. We were both holding on to each other. And I'll never forget this because our fight was over. They'd broken us up. And boy, they were going back and forth. And then you know what Probert did? He just had enough. He went like this. He headbutted McGill, and McGill's legs fell out, and down they went. I don't know if you remember that, but I'll never forget. He hit him as hard as he could with his head, Mike, and down. I've never seen a headbutt like that before.
No.
Was that the game that that Probert challenged the Leaf bench and McGill jumped off and went after him?
That was
your brawl.
one.
That was the brawl with you guys. I was at that game.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah,
that was
and it
pretty
went
cool.
on and on for a while. Yeah, it was.
Well, where I'm going with this
that's the only
is, guys.
fight me and Squid had.
Well, this is where I'm going with this on this. This is what I wanted to get your guys' opinion on. Squid and I have talked about this in the past, but today's game is not policed by the players. In your day, the players police the game. You guys know, as players, you know the guys that are out of line. You know the guy who stepped across the line and who deserves a beating, and it was done, and it was handled by the players. Today, it's stage fighting, it's hits from behind, it's headshots, it's all those things. Would you guys like to see at some point that old way was kind of brought back into the game that would sort of level things off? And I think it would take away all this crap that's out there.
I would, but I don't think it's part of the NHL mandate now, but it's more speed, skill, size, faster, bigger, stronger game, which is not, it's not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. But I think with the influx of a lot of different players, European players, that don't know the background, about the game, and so they don't care. They're just in it for themselves and their team, I should say. But just different game and a different time.
It's about accountability.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with him. I mean, it would be nice if the players could police it a little bit, but the game has changed. Everything has changed. And I mean, look at the amount of Europeans in the league now compared to in the 70s or 80s.
Which is not a bad thing.
No,
it's game, not a bad thing. It's good. They want
the game is still good. I mean, it's still a great game to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just played differently. I mean,
and I don't think that players. I mean, there doesn't seem to be. And how can I put this? I want to say that because a lot of them maybe were a little more entitled than us growing up. And it's not their fault. It's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. You're under 18 programs. You're under 17 programs. You're all stars. We never had any of that stuff when we played, Rick. I mean, I didn't play until 76 Canada Cup. I never played. I played the Russians once in junior. But I'm just saying it's grown to that point where all these kids. I think they know that the game is different and they're buddies. A little more. But the Europeans and there are guys that will take shots at you. But I think a lot of it is because there's not as much understanding of where they're at in the position of the ice, and it's so much faster and stronger and bigger. I don't know. I just think it's the game is very quick today, and they're very skilled. So
you just touched on playing for Canada in '76. You only played a little bit in the '76 Cup.
Yeah.
But in '81, you played regular. '81 was disappointment for us Canadians.
Yeah.
guys lose that game. Of course, I mean, obviously you felt bad about losing the game, but what was your takeaway from that, from playing against the Europeans, and your whole thought process thinking, would you ever imagine at that time, maybe not that night, but through that period, that those guys, all of them, would make the impact they've made on the NHL today after playing against them, like at the level of skill?
Those were some of the greatest memories of my career, were playing in 2 Canada Cups. And 76, I didn't play a lot because I was the youngest player, but I think there were 17 or 18 Hall of Famers on that team.
It was a pretty good club.
Nuts. It was nuts. And then I played with Dion and Marcel Dion and Halford, and then my back started to bother, and then Phil Esposito came in, which he deserved to be on that team because of what he did in 72. So in saying that, I mean, the teams that were good in that were teams that we weren't expecting, like the Czechoslovakia, Czechs at the time. We ended up beating them, like I said, with Darryl scoring in overtime. It went to overtime. And Darryl Sittler made a nice move on the goalie and scored. But in 81, we'd won every game. Up until the last game. And we always wanted a 2 out of 3 series for the finals, because you're there for 6 weeks and you don't get the opportunity to on one lousy game. And I think there were a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't know about. I know there was, that we didn't give 2 hoots who won, because just because of the management and the way they handled everybody getting into the final game. And the Russians, I mean, we beat them twice in the series already, but it's not an excuse, but disappointing. But the Russians were always good. But what you saw were the Swedes. I remember playing the Swedes and Borje was unbelievable. In Maple Leaf Gardens, we tied them, I think, 3-3 in that series. Or maybe that was in 7. I can't remember. It was one of the series. But, yeah, no, they have great skill. And I think what you saw throughout all of the Canada Cups, and even, now you saw some of the, throughout the All-Star, some of their All-Star performances that they had against the National Hockey. They're legit players, and that's why you're getting so many drafted.
Well, the dreaded words that every player hates to hear gets called into the manager that fateful day that you did and you've been traded. Or, take us through that whole period and ending up in Detroit. You go from a contender to a bottom dweller.
Yeah.
Meeting Jimmy, talk about the Buffalo side and then moving to Detroit and how Jimmy D kind of brought you into the fold to get you to accept what they were trying to do.
Yeah, no. I knew something was coming up. I had a feeling. Unfortunately, my father was dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. When that happened, I was going through a tough time. My wife, we were married. We were going to have a child coming in that spring. Just things that aren't outside the game, but Scotty decided to go in a different direction, and they wanted to do what they did. And I go to Detroit, and Detroit wanted me bad. And I remember in Shoney, it was a pretty big trade, man, with Foligno and McCord. It was a 7-player trade. So what you find out is that when you're playing on a good team, and I knew all the referees because I was a captain, and I'm not going to name who, but they'd give you leeway. They'd give you, this and that. And then when I go to Detroit and I try the same thing, they kick me out of the game. I go, why? I'm not doing it. No, it was hard when you really notice that, is what I thought. You notice that bad teams got shitty calls and good teams got good calls, or whatever. And you had to earn it. So I was very fortunate when the Ilitch family bought the team. I met with Mike and Marion and Mr. Deblano. Jimmy was resurrecting that organization, and they wanted me to be captain. That was a great honor to be a captain, as Rick knows, of an original 6 teams. And we went on to win a couple playoff rounds and got the thing back on track a little. And I had a guy on my left who was number 19, Steve Yzerman.
He's a pretty good player.
Yeah.
Not bad. Yeah. And on my right was number 17, Gerard Gallant. So that was a big part of their turnaround process. Stevie went on to take over the captaincy, and we all know what he has accomplished in his great career. And even Gerard. And they had some other good guys on that team too. But I was there, 4 or 5 years, and I was glad to be a part of maybe helping them out to get to where they are at or where they were going. But yeah, it was tough to be told you're no longer wanted. Okay, by a team that I thought I bled blue and gold. It's just difficult. You know, it was a difficult time in my life. But hey,
So after
they brought me back.
So after that, you ended up getting into coaching.
Yeah, I did.
What was the toughest part about going from a player to a coach? Because I did the same thing. And I just want to hear what you have to say, because I know what I had to go through.
Well, it was funny, and it started out. It was actually with the Lightning in Tampa. That's where I'm sitting here in Tampa right now. And I just watched them win the cup. I thought that was awesome. But to be, an original Lightning is kind of neat. I worked there for 5 years. First year I did broadcast with John Kelly, and Terry Crisp and Wayne Cashman were the coaches. And they wanted to add another coach. Like Terry Crisp he was a head coach, and Cash, and they said, well, let's talk to Danny. And I said, well, I'd love to coach, because I didn't have an opportunity. I get a chance to be an assistant with them, and I did that for 4 years and loved every minute of it. But I think the big part of it is, Rick, is that, you've got to be, you can't have that, you can't do anything on the ice. You've got to, when we wanted to make a difference, we could do something on the ice if you wanted to get try to change the game around. So you had to do it through your mind, and you had to come across with the right things to say and how to deal with and communicate is what I'm saying. And it was good. I enjoyed it, but unfortunately they went on strike, and I ended up going back to Buffalo, and I went back with I had my kids and whatever to raise. And so, yeah, I enjoyed it, but I know you were in it a little longer than I was. And then I stayed in broadcasting after that. So it was a great experience. So I wish I could have maybe, if differences were a little, if the timing was different, I think I would have loved to stay on as a coach, but it just didn't seem to fit.
Well, and then you went into broadcasting. I know we just got a couple minutes left, so I just want to touch on this very quickly. But, working with Rick Jeanneret, one of the legendary callers of all time. I mean, there's nobody better. I mean, this guy's just off the chart again.
Classic.
Did you, your takeaway work with him, just talk about that experience working in the booth.
Okay, so I come back to Buffalo, and they gave me an opportunity to work on the radio with Rick Jeanneret. Okay. And Archie, I've known him for years, he's been around forever, did some TV later, but the game that I remember, I'm in Madison Square Gardens in New York, and they were redoing the press box, okay, at MSG. And they had us up in the gallery gods, they call them, the Blues, okay, in the MSG and in the garden. So I'm sitting there, and they got these boards in front of us, right in the seats where the people are sitting, and there, guys, he's up there smoking, people are smoking, they're drinking beer and all this stuff. So I'm sitting there, and I got a little tiny monitor on, there's three seats we've taken up, with cardboard thing there, or a plywood piece to put our notes in that. So they go down, Sabres go down the ice, and Howard Chuck and Andrew Chuck make a good play to Mogilny, and they score. Now, I don't even see the damn thing. Everybody stands up, okay, because I'm doing something, and it happened quickly. So I'm looking at the monitor doing the replay on radio, and I go, oh, watch how Anderchuk, look how Howard Chuck gets the net, and watch McGillney, watch how he shoots it. And I'm reading it off the monitor, okay, and we're on radio, and he goes, they can't see.
Your introduction to radio.
Oh, yeah, because we're on radio. He goes, they can't see. Oh, it was classic. It was classic. And then the other one I tell is the LaFontaine when I was up in the box with Barry Butel, and it was a small box in the press box. And we just traded for LaFontaine. And he gets up when LaFontaine scores his goal. His first goal as a Sabre. What he does, he had no notes or anything in front of him. I got 100 of them. He puts his hands like this, just put against us, like holds us back. I've never seen him do this. Like holds us, like shut up. And he goes, la 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 Fontaine. And I almost fell out of the box.
I remember that.
Yeah,
remember that.
We're gonna miss him. We're gonna miss him when he decides to hang it up. But I wanted to before I go.
Absolutely,
I enjoyed every minute of it. Before I go, and Rick, thanks so much, and Mike for the opportunity to talk a little old stories. And Rick, you were a hell of a player. I enjoyed playing, not that much against you, but you knew how to score with that big, heavy Titan, and I don't know how you did that. 50 goals 3 times. But thank you for coming on. And I wanted to this logo I have. I'm involved in a company called Can Ice. It's synthetic ice company, and Rick knows synthetic ice has been around, but it's really been with technology and manufacturing. It's changed the way you can skate, and it's manufactured here in Tampa. That's why I'm down here a lot. We have a lot of NHL players use it for training. A lot of people in the Toronto area bought during the pandemic, and we appreciate that. And, if they want to go on sometime to take a look at this great premier synthetic ice product, they can go to can.ice.com and check it out.
Danny, tell very quickly, how does it work? Can they use it in their backyard during these?
You can put it any
time of the year?
Very, very portable. Yeah, it can be used any time of the year. It's a big part of what I look for is what I've been working for in these 10 years is the glide. It's got to be similar to ice, and the glide and the way the technology and the polymers are put together in this through our manufacturer are second to none. They're one of the top plastic companies in North America. So we're fortunate in finding them. Yep. But I mean, I wish I had it when I was a kid. I mean, I used to shoot pucks off of plywood, but the mechanics of skating, having the same inside edge, outside edge, you can put in your basement, your backyard, anything that's flat. Like I said, it's a great product for kids to develop 365 days of the year.
Well, when my grandson gets to about 2 or 2.5, I'm gonna get.
I got a 1-year-old too, so about another year.
I'm gonna call you, and I'm gonna be buying some from you because I'm gonna get him on the ice.
You do that. I'll take good care of you, Ricky.
Hey, never mind that, boys. Hey, never mind that. Some of my old timers I play with, they still think the dream is alive. So maybe I'll get some of them in order to use in the off season.
Hey, we have a lot of gentlemanly hockey players that buy it and still think that dream is alive. And that's good. Yeah.
Well, Danny, I want Rick. You got a final comment before we let Danny go? He's actually got to run.
Yeah, the dream is over.
Well, yeah, exactly. It is. Well, they don't think so. And the more beer they drink, the more alive it becomes.
I can tell you right now, the dream is over. Other than the alumni games, the alumni games are a lot of fun, though.
We played a lot of them together, Rick. Those were great times, and I don't skate as much, but we had a lot of fun with those, and they were great for the camaraderie, get to know each other. I loved every one of those, But
they're a lot of fun because I get to see some of the boys I played with, and
some
of the guys I didn't play with that played after me that are younger, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I probably play about 50 of them a year.
Not this year.
Well, no, not this year, and not at the end of last season, but going forward, hopefully we get back at it. And
there you go.
I'm 61 now, and I'm still going out, and I'm probably getting about 14 or 15 shots a game, and they all tease me too. Are your arms sore? No.
Well, hey, Squid, I'm not shooting the puck, but I'm going to go hit the golf ball right now. So,
I already did this morning.
Hey, and on that.
Oh, you played this morning. Good.
Hey, and on that note, Danny, again, we want to thank you for joining us today. You were terrific, great stories. Best of luck with your adventure in the
Can Ice.
And listen, thanks for coming on, and great having you.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Thanks, Tickets.
Guys.
Thanks,
Chickens.
See you, bud. See you, Squid.
Okay.
You got it.
See you, Danny. Well, there you go, Squid. There's Danny Gare, just one of the pure gentlemen in the game of hockey. Just a happy-go-lucky, lively guy. I'm telling you, he's one of those guys you would probably hate to play against, but you would love to have him on your team.
Well, I think you said it perfectly. He's a guy you hated to play against because he was in your face all night. He could score goals. He could do everything. And I've gotten to know Danny over the years, having played in Buffalo. He was around, and even after that, alumni stuff in Buffalo. And I'll tell you what, he's a fantastic person. He was a great player, very difficult to play against. And I mean, I can't say much more about the guy. I mean, he's just a great person, and he was a great hockey player, and one that you hated to play against because, like, well, you heard him there. When he scored that goal, he goes by Toronto's bench, and of all people, hey, Tiger, look at it, I got the 50th.
Yeah, to just give it to him. I mean, that's you just got to love that. Those are the days, and I think that's one of the things I wanted to touch on because, the way the game has gone today, in those days, you did have that sort of code of respect and how players sort of treated each other is, I almost liken it to the fact when players went from wearing no helmet to wearing helmets to the kids having no face masks to wearing face masks, where all of a sudden then the sticks came up, the shots from behind got bigger, and all of a sudden all these injuries started developing where it just sort of took that respect part away from the game.
Yeah, I think you're right to a degree, and but the evolution had already started, and then
I
think the biggest jump in that way was after the lockout in 2004 or 5, whatever it was. Then all of a sudden, all those new rules came in, and the game completely changed. And then you got to remember that a lot of the players playing in the NHL today, they really only started playing with those rules, a lot of them, or they had already played 5 years or 4 years, and then all of a sudden those rules came in. So they're used to it. And that's what you see in the National Hockey League today. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's
not at all.
It's still a great product. It's still a great game. It's just a lot different than what we remember as players when we played.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, that's a good way. I mean, we can't go back in time, but it's just, if you could have that little bit of accountability sort of creeped under our game today, it just would take it just to that next level once again. Because, I heard a funny story about Tiger one time because guys wouldn't want to go near him because the problem with Tiger was, as Danny would point it out or anybody who's coming to any of the guys who've talked about this patch, you knew who you would have to be fighting. Whatever team you were playing, you would probably be challenged by this guy at some point. Well, they all accepted that except Tiger, because if you fought Tiger once, he'd fight you every time he saw you on the ice.
Oh, yeah.
No one and done with him. And they'd say, we don't need this. I have to be on the ice to score some goals to get a contract. I can't be in the penalty box and I fight you 4 times. So they'd leave alone. And it had the opposite effect.
Well, that was one of the greatest moments in my career was when Mike Nicolak said the exact words to me. He said, we can't have you fighting and going in the penalty box anymore. We need you on the ice to score goals. And I said, oh, well, thank you very much, Mike.
You give that role to somebody else. Thank you. I'll pass that one along.
Absolutely. Anyway, I was more than happy to give up the fighting and scoring goals.
Give that to them. Exactly right. And so anyway, I think, that's our show for today, folks. We had a great time with Danny Gare. Obviously you heard he's a class act. Terrific career. Just what a wholehearted guy. One of those guys that just comes along, not a big guy. And it's just one of those guys you just tip your hat to. So we want to thank Hockey News. 1947, they've been around since, providing you with all the news, anything concerning hockey anywhere around the world. To get your subscription to the Hockey News, go to thn.com/deal for the best value. Squid, thanks for joining me as usual. You can follow us on Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan on Twitter. Rick Vaive, you can follow on Instagram or on Twitter under the Rick Vaive handle. The Ultimate Leaf Fan, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. We want to thank everybody for joining us. Looking forward to talking to you guys next week. Everybody have a great week.